Welcome to the space between us. I'm your host, Christine Young, psychologist and founder of Weaver. This is a podcast about your social health and connections and what happens to them when you are building something that demands everything. If you are leading, founding, or building something ambitious and wondering how others stay connected to those they love and care, this is for you. Every episode, I speak with leaders and founders who share what it really cost them and what they learned along the way while building big things. Not your usual expert advice podcast, just truth. This is the space between us. Let's meet there. Welcome back to this episode. In this episode, it's my honor to sit with Dr. Juliet Bourke. She's operating at the top across executive, academic, and nonprofit leadership. She hosts the award-winning The Business of podcast. She is an adjunct professor in the School of Management and Governance at UNSW Business School and the chair of Ovarian Cancer Australia. Previously a partner at Deloitte, she is also a TEDx speaker, author of 3 books and hundreds of articles, including Harvard Business Review's 10 must-reads on leadership. She has received over 10 global awards for her leadership, including AFR's Top 100 Women of Influence. Her next book, co-authored with Joe Gray, is Unbound, Deciding What Comes After the Big Job and Before Retirement, is out in 2027. We talk about how she built her career in this episode, not through chasing positions, but through purpose and the people who believed in her. And we talk about the loneliness that comes when you can't be vulnerable and why vulnerability and trust can't be optional if you want to stay genuinely connected at an executive level. How you have to choose your people intentionally and work hard to keep them close as you move through different chapters, and how Juliet does it with real effort and hard work. This is the episode you don't want to miss if you are ambitious, because Juliet shows you this. Success without people who know you is just loneliness wrapped in achievement. I hope you are going to enjoy this episode as much as I do. Welcome back, everyone. And today I'm sitting down with someone whose name you have almost certainly come across if you work in leadership, inclusion, or organizational culture. We have Dr. Juliet Bourke. Juliet and I have had the privilege of working together, and I can tell you firsthand that she's one of those very rare leaders who truly lives what she teaches. Every time when I speak with her, work with her, I felt like you are extremely humble, genuinely inclusive, and someone I have always wondered, what's the story behind all this? How did you cultivate that leadership presence and has this successful career? And what has the journey really asked of you? So today, I'm so honored to have you in the podcast. I'm so glad you are here, Juliet. Thank you for saying yes to this. Welcome to the space between us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me, Christine. And it's a pleasure to support you.
Thank you, Juliet. Now, you have built not only, in my eyes, a successful career in our field, but also a career that, as I said, many aspire to and deeply respect. I want to start at the very beginning of that. What gives you that drive to be this leader and advocate what you are advocating for, which is inclusive leadership and many other things? And has that changed over time?
That's a great question, whether it's changed over time. I think I have been motivated from a very young age to be other oriented. And I saw myself as being given a whole lot of gifts and privileges, which I could see other people didn't always have. And I thought it was my responsibility to sort of create fairness in the world around me. And that originally started as being a lawyer. So I had wanted to become a lawyer since year 10 at school. I had a fantastic teacher, English teacher, Carol Knott, and she really encouraged me with public speaking and to think about becoming a lawyer. And I did that for more than 10 years and had a great time being, first of all, a criminal lawyer and then a human rights lawyer. But that fairness kind of in the justice system then became slightly, well, I could say it became bigger, or it went to sort of in a different direction. And I was looking at fairness in the workplace and wanting to make a difference to people's experience of work. So yeah, I guess the ambition to make a difference and use the talents that I'd been given, the opportunities that I'd been given, to help other people has always been a driving force. So my ambition hasn't been to be at the top of organizations. I think that that's just happened as a natural byproduct in a way. Yeah, I wasn't chasing that. I was just chasing opportunities to make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's a very sustainable way, isn't it? If you are aiming for a position, it's not sustainable. It's always
Mm,
come back to your purpose. And it
mm.
sounds like since you were young, you have that value or cultivate a value that is justice is very important to you.
Yeah, it is. It's social justice, human justice. Yeah, whichever way it shows up. And I suppose you would always think that that comes back to the family that you've been brought up in. It is probably a very strong narrative in my
Yeah.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And as your career progressed, who are the people that have made your ambition possible? And
Mm.
how have you honored them along the way? You mentioned about your teacher,
Yeah.
and who else?
Yeah. And there have been a number of people that kind of stand out in my mind. And I do want to honor Carol Knott. She was the teacher
Mm,
at my school. And so I went back to her years later and said to her, thank you so much for putting me on that path. And then there was I don't know if there's a book called Who's Who of Australian Women. I honored her in that book to say, that was the start of me channeling the idea about wanting to make a difference into a career, and the career was
mm,
the first one was
mm,
being a lawyer. And then even another part of my education was there were two fantastic lecturers that I had at UNSW when I went to law school there, David Brown and Jill Hunter, two professors. And they were really formative for me in terms of understanding the legal system and realizing that I didn't want to be a commercial lawyer. I wanted to be a criminal lawyer at that stage. And then when I had an opportunity in 2007, I was given an award by the university for being an esteemed alumni. Then I invited them and they came to the award and I had an opportunity to thank them publicly. So that was lovely. So, where you can go back to someone, I think, and say to them, you said something, you did something, you probably didn't even know how important it was at the time, but it set me off on a path. And I love it sometimes when people have done that to me. And I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity in someone else's path. So I think this idea of going back and letting someone know that they've had impact is important. And then in my career, I think a couple of people, there was another guy also called David Brown who led the legal section that I worked in. And he was just a great guy in terms of helping me understand policy, which I then started to move into. And then in the workplace, really important people to me who were senior leaders within Deloitte and who had my back, so they became CEOs. So Adam Powick, Rob Hillard, Cindy Hook, really amazing people. Oh, Nikki Wakefield, who originally brought me into Deloitte. They were just such wonderful humans and I felt so supported by them. And I hope they know that. I think I tell them, but I certainly don't have a moment like I have had with my school teacher and my university when I have won an award to say it's thanks to them. But hopefully they know that. And hopefully for these podcasts, they know that.
Yeah, they can listen to this podcast. So it sounds like is the people that support you, how do you find them? Do you
Mm,
attract them or for people who are listening, for leaders or
mm,
managers or founder like myself? How do I
mm,
look for sponsors or mentors and how do I build the relationships along the way?
mm. I mean, for me, it has definitely been, I have definitely sought out a person, at least one
Mm,
person in the workplace that I'm in that I feel an affinity with, that I
mm,
feel that we're on the same page. They might not be working in the same area that I'm working
mm,
in, but there's someone
mm.
in the business that I feel is that friend that I can bounce ideas off, that I can trust and that they can trust me. And so I'm definitely deliberately looking for a tribe. And sometimes that happens because I'm looking and then I'm creating that relationship with them. I'm deliberately building it. Or sometimes they're building it with me and I can see that they're trying to do that. But I think about those people within the business. If I think about Deloitte, for example, where I was a partner for 10 years, there
Yeah.
were definitely people in my immediate practice area that I felt like I could, say, we were in that meeting. What did you hear? That kind of person, but also people outside of that group. So in the broader network of the organization. And then in addition to that, finding people outside the organization as well. And those people would be either personal friends, but friends who were professionals as well, so that I could touch base with them to say, hey, I'm experiencing this at the moment. Sometimes I would name those people to them as being, you're mentoring me in this moment, sort of to give them a title to what I felt that they were doing. But other times it was much more informal to that. And then most recently, I'm on the Chair's Mentoring Program for the AICD, in which I'm being mentored by someone who's a very senior chair, and I have a buddy. And that's me being part of a system that's been set up to deliberately seek mentorship. And that has been really helpful as well. So I suppose it happens organically where you're choosing it. But if you have the opportunity to be part of a mentoring program, then that can be enormously helpful. To make it work, I think you have to be sufficiently vulnerable with the other person. And that is hard. It is really hard. The more senior you become, the more it is difficult to be vulnerable, because you know that whatever you say, even if it's supposedly in a cone of silence, it will find a way to leak out. But if you don't have that vulnerability and that trust, it's very isolating. It's very lonely. So the trade-off to trust and be vulnerable, the more senior you become, has more risk attached to it, but also has greater necessity. So the stakes. Like, I know the stakes when I am trusting someone, even with things that might be deeply uncomfortable, where I've made a big mistake and I need to work it through with someone. Yeah, it's important to do that.
And how do you know that this person I can be vulnerable with, but this one I need to be having a boundary? How do you discern who is who?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, some people are very trusting from the get-go, and I would say I am trusting from the get-go to a degree. But even within that, I suppose, if I just speak about myself, I am trusting them with little bits of information that have some risk attached to them, but they're not central to who I am. And as time goes by and I see what they do with that information, whether it filters back to me in some way, which means they've broken my trust, or whether I can see they really care about it and they reference it again the next time, so I can see they've been thinking about it. I think for me, it builds over time until there'll probably become a moment, and I'm thinking about it with one very close friend of mine who I also think mentors me. And we had sort of personal conversations and work conversations over a sustained period, probably about 3 years. And then I knew I needed someone's advice, and she was the kind of person who could give it to me because of her background. And so I rang her and said, hey, I need you to be my mentor in this situation and talk straight to me. So even though we were friends, I was sort of like pulling her into be my guide, don't just be my friend. And I was trusting her with something where I felt I had not been at my best and how to think through that. And I was very emotionally vulnerable with her. And then the relationship continued on after that. So I think you choose your moments to share something, and then you can grow it at an even deeper level because you've taken a risk with it. So it grows slowly over time for me.
Any specific behaviors or qualities in the other person you think that's really critical in this trusting relationships?
I think when you are vulnerable with them and are talking about yourself, that they don't then just start talking about themselves. You've come to them for a need that you have. And some people are not very good at just staying in the place with you and just allowing you to talk and validating and challenging you. This person that I'm thinking about in particular, Maureen, she challenged me as well and pushed back on my thinking. And I really appreciated that. So someone who you're taking a risk with is sort of prepared to have a longer than normal conversation about you. It's not in that moment, it's not necessarily a share. You know how we often do trades in conversations? I
Yeah.
say something that's vulnerable,
Yeah.
you say something that's vulnerable. When you are going to someone with a deep need, they're prepared to stay on your side of the fence for a bit longer. And that allows you to have depth in the conversation. And she allowed me to do that. So I think we must have spoken for about 45 minutes. I was thinking through, I need help on this point. Who can I talk to that would have content that's valuable for me? She's got her own experience before. She'd been a
Mhm.
CEO, and that would have my best interests at heart. And so
Mm.
I pushed the relationship to a new level
Yeah.
by doing that. Yeah.
So is it true that people say it's lonely at the top? How many of that kind of friends that you have?
Uh,
Is it just one or two that's very rare?
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It probably is. Literally 3 people that I would go to for different kinds of advice, but high quality advice in which I can be myself and be deeply vulnerable with them. Yeah, it's probably 3.
And does friendship come first or professional relationship come first? Or is kind of parallel, as you said. It's not one
Mm.
big defining moment. It's always small moments that you build trust.
Yeah, what a great question again. I think it's both. Like I think of one person who I always go to for advice, Chinsia. She and I were friends for a long time. We went to law school together. I've known her for a very long time. And so it's a mix of trust in our personal relationships and then professional advice. Whereas other people who I started work with, I'm thinking here about Rachel and Marissa, we were work colleagues and definitely started at a professional level with professional advice, became
Mhm.
friends, and then has deepened in that way. So, yeah, I think it can be both. I don't think that there's one or the other. And then Maureen, we were in a workplace together and became friends. And then she's continued to give me advice as we've gone along. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
both ways. I don't think there's a magic in it.
Yes, I probably feel it right now, like because I'm running my own business and have a
Mm,
certain level of ambition. There are friends that I can talk to because they understand what it takes to build a business. And there are also personal friends that have not really necessarily have that ambition. And I felt when I spend time with them is very different, the feeling. And
mm.
there were certain things definitely I wouldn't share. And I felt like the topics are not necessarily a common interest when I share certain things with my other friends. I feel there is a need to have different types of friend. And I wonder if you see the same as
I
you
think
progress through your career.
No, I think that's right. I think the people in their own lives, in the same way that people would come to you or people would come to
Mm,
me for
mm,
different needs,
yeah.
you kind of need a tribe of people that you can choose from the right moment at the right time. And also
Mm,
in terms of their availability. You know, some people might be really busy and it's not the right time to burden them with something. So, yeah, I think you need a range. So I think that it's in itself a sort of diversification of advice is also helpful.
absolutely. And how has your sense of self evolved as your career has grown?
Mm.
And do you feel like the same person your closest friends knew 10 years ago?
I think my sense of self has changed, but my underlying values are the same. And so my underlying energy about doing things, my curiosity, my sort of drive, ambition, I'm very intellectually curious. Those things would be the same. And I will probably have the same critiques of my
Mm.
personality that 10 years ago as I have today, which is that, you know, some people might find my intellectual curiosity about things just too intense. Like I'm always interested in new ideas and, you know,
And I
writing a new
love it.
book.
Yeah.
Some people might love it. Some people might be like,
I,
you know,
I
well,
love
one of my other friends was like, can't you just read a boring book on a beach or something like that? I'm like, well,
it.
actually, no, I can't. I need to read something really interesting. So that side of me is still the same. But the side of me that's different is my sense of self, in the
Mm,
sense that my identity when I first started out, it was very attached to being a lawyer. And I really thought of myself as a lawyer. And I don't think of myself like that anymore. I did that sort of for the first 15 years. And now I would see myself in a sort of broader, you know, having an interest in commerce as well as government and policy. So a much broader sense of where I sit in the world. And then
mm,
most recently in the last 5 years, developing my abilities around a board table. And so I see myself in sort of that field more closely now. So if I compare working in a board, that domain, compared to what I started my career as a lawyer, those are quite different identities. But underneath all of that, I'm still the same person. That's probably why I still have friends. Like this last night, I went to the theatre with a friend of mine whom I've known since grade 5. So I'm
Wow.
still that
Grade
person.
5.
Yeah. And she's still that person, you know, like we're
Yeah,
still the
yeah.
same people that we knew and liked each other then. And then we went through school together and went through uni together. Yeah, same person.
Yeah, we need those older days buddy to
Mm.
play, to remind us, oh, we are actually can be that silly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah, right?
They know exactly who you are. I always think about like when you hear from I was listening to Mick Jagger the other day and he was talking about his friends from childhood. He lives a life that is not a normal life, but he has these people who don't see that. They just see Mick. You're just Mick,
Yeah,
you know? They
yeah.
don't see the star. And I think that's, you know, really interesting for someone at his heights to still connect with someone who's just the person they went to school with.
I think that's really critical. You can be fully yourself. It's like there is not much explanation needed. Whether
Yeah.
you won an award or whether how much money you're making and impact you're making in the world, they
Yeah.
still see you as as the kid that, we grow up together.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I think when I hear you play it back to me, what it also makes me think is that there must inevitably be people around you who can't travel that journey with you,
Mm,
who aren't comfortable with your growth
yeah.
and I've definitely experienced that. I remember one person saying to me at one stage, who would have thought that you'd become so successful? And I just thought, wow, that was so mean spirited, you know, like, I don't know what you're trying to say here, but even though they were a friend from childhood, I felt that any success that I had was a threat to them. And
Yeah.
they had I sort of underestimated me. And whereas the friend that I saw from grade 5, she never had any expectations that I will or I won't be anything. She was just like, yeah, you're just a nice person. So yeah, so I think that's the other side of it. That you can't take some friends with you because they have limiting expectations of you.
It's like a mirror of holding it up for them and
Mm,
make them feel like they are lack of something or they are not
mm.
good enough. And it's not necessarily always about me or you. It's about where they're at in their own world and how they see others, right? It's a reflection of them.
I could see that it was a reflection of her. I understood that. But I also need people around me who are energy givers. And
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
want people in my camp who have got my back and who are not going to be draining me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think if I look at all of my personal relationships, I can't think of anyone at the moment who's not an energy giver. I'm not sure if I am subconsciously weeding them out in a way, but I do see that the group of friends that I have and the group of kind of colleagues are very positive, energetic, curious, wise people that I
Yeah.
want to spend my time with. I see my time as precious and I
Yeah.
don't want to spend it on things or
Yeah.
with people
Yeah.
that aren't going to, be a positive source for good.
And I was about to ask you, and you kind of alluded to it anyway, is like, do you consciously create that group of tribe?
I definitely remember periods where there were people in my life who were negative. This is when I was at uni and they were sucking energy from me
Yeah.
and making a conscious decision. This is not good for me. I am not becoming a better person. I am not growing. You're holding me back. And so I guess what I would probably do is I would just through a natural process of attrition, spend less time with them. So the people that I value, I consciously make an effort. So, for example, one of the women I mentioned before, Cinzia, she and
Mm,
I have now decided that we will get together every month. We will have lunch every month. So we
yeah.
put it in the diary every month, and that's a conscious decision of ours, not to let it happen organically in a way. I'll just call you when I need to say something, but to have a regular cadence of connection. So yeah, your diary, my diary. There's only so much time. There's only so many things you can fit
Yeah.
into your diary. And yeah, I definitely consciously pursue spending time with people who I want to spend time with.
Do you think planning your social health and
Yeah.
conscious connection
Yeah.
is more critical as you go when you become more senior, or your ambition is bigger and bigger because you have less energy and less time?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if it's a matter of seniority or a matter of if you're also isolated. So if you're in a business by
Mm,
yourself, and at one stage I was a founder of my own business as
mm,
well, co-founder, and I remember at that stage thinking, I need to find a tribe. It's too lonely, it's too isolating to
yeah.
have that. So it could be a seniority thing, or it could be, you're not located near people, like you're
Yeah.
working rurally, remotely, or you're working a lot from home. So I think there can be many reasons why you realize you have to make an effort around social fitness. And I think of that as a daily activity. So I would make sure that there's sort of someone every day that I have connected with
Connect.
in a social
Meaningful connection with.
in a meaningful connection way. Yeah. So in the same way that I swim every day, I would make sure there's a social connection every day. Certainly it would be
Yeah.
unusual for me to have a day in which I have not connected with someone. Honestly, I can't think of the last day that that's happened.
Yeah, in my line of work, I work with people in their relationship and social well-being so much. I don't think many are consciously doing what you just said, like to plan the social connection. And what would you say to people if they say, I just don't have time? Work is so busy. I don't have time. And 10 hours at work, I have 9 meetings. How do
Yeah.
I be meaningfully connect to other person?
Well, it may be that the cadence for that person is not a daily cadence. It might be a weekly cadence, like that
Yeah.
maybe there is something in that. But it's in the same way that exercise has a cadence to it, physical exercise. When I had young kids and I was a partner, I didn't have much time, but I did make sure every Saturday morning to go for a walk with a girlfriend. And so that was
Wow.
my cadence that suited that time in my life.
Yeah.
But I do think in the same way that we think about physical fitness, we might only be able to fit in 15 minutes of something once a
Yeah.
week. It's still
Yeah.
important to have that because at the end of the year, that's 52, occurrences where you have had connection with someone. And I also think the important thing about the connection with a person is you are involving yourself in their world. It's taking you outside of yourself. You are providing someone else with support and you're doing it proactively. There's sort of that give and take relationship. You may be supporting them one time you go
Mm,
for a walk and then they're supporting you
mm,
another time, or maybe you're just chit-chatting and it's a neutral conversation. Any of those ways of being part of a book club once a month or going to the gym and seeing your gym buddies or whatever, I do think the more you have in the diary, you probably need to plan for it more and
mm.
pull something out, even if it's for a short period, just so that you can have that connectivity. Because at the end of it, you'll walk away, that work will finish, and
Yeah.
then you'll be like, well, where are all my relationships? And if you didn't spend in time investing in them along the way, they probably won't be there. So, for example, I'll tell you this anecdote that there was a friend of mine, we went to law school together and she became a partner in a law firm and had 2 young kids and she was the primary breadwinner. And she said to me at one stage, we were very good friends and I liked her a lot and I still like her. But she said at one stage, I'm just letting you know I'm not going to see you for the next 20 years because my life is going to be, I'm just too busy and I need to prioritize. And what I've prioritized is my husband, my kids, and my parents. And I totally understood that. I understood where she was coming from, but she hadn't been the person now 20 years later. She and I don't have a close relate. We haven't been through 20 years of stuff. I know her. And so we don't have shared interests anymore. So I think you can have a false expectation that that relationship will always be there. But if you haven't nurtured that relationship and grown with that relationship, actually that relationship becomes quite dormant.
If there is a large amount of time that you don't have that shared experience, where is this relationship? There is no relation, right?
Yeah,
I can't relate to you. You can't relate to me anymore.
that's true. And I think the other thing that was there is the signaling. The signaling was, you are not important in my life. I understood why that was true for her. I totally got it. But it was a mistake on her part, I think. If she had said, look, I'm really busy, but if we could just get together once every 6 months, there would be something. But I think to make this hard and fast, and her expectation was that she could go back to the friendship 20 years later, and it hasn't materialized. So, but I think mentally that's what people do. They think, I don't have time for this, I'll pick it up later.
The tricky part in modern day life is that we are all busy, right? We are all busy. And I stopped telling people, how are you? I'm busy. It's almost everyone is busy. If we don't nurture a relationship, it's very obvious that you know how important you are in certain person's life and is implied. And the tricky thing in friendship is we don't talk about it that much compared to other relationships. Parenting or romantic relationships or work relationships, friendship is this area that we don't talk about, but is so critical for us to have that, and particularly meaningful ones. It's very tricky because people don't tend to say, oh, well, you are not my priority. People don't even say it, but you felt it and then fall apart. And it's so interesting your friend chose to say that to you.
I know. And credit to her that she did, because I would have sensed it anyway, but I think it was a mistake because we did try and pick it up again, but we couldn't.
Yeah.
But I think even if you see that happening, that sort of silence, you can say to someone, hey,
Yeah.
I can see it's really hard for you. Why don't we just agree that, we're going to catch up for a coffee every quarter? There's just some cadence to it. And also I think it needs to be shared, that both sides need to be doing that. There's certainly an effort in turning up. The other person keeps asking and you keep turning up, and that is an effort. But I think also sharing the initiation of that is important too.
Absolutely. And what part of your personal life you have been most intentionally protect?
I am very private around
Yeah.
my intimate family, so my husband and my children. It is rare for me to invite people into my home unless they are good friends. I just don't do that. That's my space. That's my sanctuary. And I remember someone who worked for me years ago saying, oh, what's your house like? Or could the team come over and, all have drinks at your house one night? And I just felt so invaded. And I know that other leaders did that in the business. They would have, and I know that people are curious about where do you live, but it's just not the place I go to. So I've often taken my husband and my kids to things that have been work events, but I've never talked about them as a case study or, revealed anything. Like the things that you would see or hear about them would be very light touch. And I do that to protect their privacy. I don't even sort of do things on LinkedIn with them because I just feel like that's a different relationship. And I get a lot of energy from my husband and my children. I am very supportive of them, and it's just not the place I want to go to make them part of my public world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because we are in a world where the influencer are so many out there, like on YouTube, TikTok, and it's almost a different modern life compared to what you just shared. People are exposing their very, like everything, their cat, their dogs, their friends, their sisters, mothers on social media. I really understand the protective of your home environment and your home life. We're speaking about a lot about relationship and connection. So what do you know now about connection and relationships that you wish you had known earlier?
I don't think I realized early in my career how much I like working with other people. I thought I was very independent, and I am independent, but now I make conscious decisions to always do projects with other people. I'm writing another book at the moment, and I reached out to someone to say, do you want to write it with me? Whereas in 2016, I had written a book all by myself. And I'd written another one in 2000 all by myself. So, but this time around, I'm like, if I can do it with someone, it's more fun. We can talk about it. So it wasn't until I was a co-founder in a business and I enjoyed the kind of, what this is like, when it's just by yourself, there's no one you can talk to. There's no one who cares about the business as much as you do, unless you have a co-founder. And that made me realize I really like doing things with other people. All of the projects that I have ongoing at the moment are with other people. That's an intentional thing for me. I wish I'd known that beforehand. Maybe it would have made those previous projects more enjoyable. but I know it now.
Do you think because back then you had a team of people that you work with, like back in Deloitte, you have a team of people and not until you like have your own business, then you feel a bit of isolation. Is that right? Or do you think the context helped? What actually shift?
Yeah, what shifted was, in particular, I was working on a project. I was chairing an organization and I could see the limits of my own skills in doing that. It really made me aware that there were things, I had blind spots in my capabilities, and then bringing diverse skills into the team just made it so much more interesting and just really expanded my knowledge, but also the ability for that project to be successful. So I think it was the practical learning that I had about doing things with other people. And then as that progressed and I worked closely with other people, especially writing projects, just the joy, like I wrote with Bernadette Dillon for a long time and it was just such a joy to write with her. And then more recently, Andrea Titus, she and I have a strong working relationship. I think we've been writing together for 7 years. And it's just a joy. There is a knowledge-based piece that makes the project better. But for me, it's also this kind of doing it together. Because if you think back, previously when I was a lawyer for 15 years, that is a very solitary existence, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The litigation, the advice, it's something you have to work on and you're accountable for. And that is very much driven into the way that world works. And that is as it should be. So it was really coming out of that and having opportunities to do things with other people that alerted me to the joy of collaboration.
From the sound of it, you learn things, different things from other people as well. Like you continue grow with other people, all that. Make it more meaningful and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And making the success a shared success. I remember interviewing someone and she said, it's so much better to do this with someone else because at the end of the project, we'll celebrate together. And I just thought, what a wonderful perspective. And that is certainly my experience as well. So it's from the sort of broadening your perspective, sharing problems, sharing challenges together, and then celebrating at the other end. That is a very different way of working than I previously had.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up the podcast, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you felt like is so important for people to know about relationship, about career ambition?
So the thing that I guess I've learned at the end of it is that there are wonderful connections that you make with people along the way that are given to you as being part of work. And some of those people will convert into friends, deep friends. Most won't. So to set your expectation, but that is still good to have good collegiate relationships with people. Yeah. But if you want to take any of those people with you into the next part of your journey, then you're going to have to work much harder at it because you don't have the natural environment of work, the proximity to that person, the shared conversation. So pick one or two people and work hard at taking them with you. If you genuinely enjoyed them as a friend and they genuinely enjoyed you, be intentional about it is what I would say, given the fact that I've moved through a number of workplaces over time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julie. It's such an honor to chat with you today because I know you're a very private person and I know that what you have given us today is asking a bit of you to think through, and I really value this moment with you sharing this about your career, about your ambition and your relationships. I have learned a lot. I'm sure whoever is listening also learned a lot from you, Juliet. Thank you so much.
Thank you for acknowledging that. It does feel uncomfortable. I do feel uncomfortable in this moment. And I do, and also the concentration on me. If I'm very other oriented, I find that uncomfortable. But because I want to support you and hopefully anyone else who's listening to this, if there was sort of one thing that I said that was helpful to someone else, then it's worth that exposure. So I appreciate
you
you
have said many
acknowledging that.
things. Thank you so much, Juliet, for today.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If this conversation resonates with you, I'd love you to share it with someone who is navigating the same tension, someone who is building something big and wondering how to stay close to the people they love and care. All the links and resources we talked about are in the show notes. New episode drops every 2 weeks. And if you want to stay connected between episodes, Follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. I share stories, insights, and reflections on social health and relationships to help you build stronger connections. Until next time, I will see you in the space between us.